I hear a lot of people say you should not hire anybody like you. You should go out and hire people who are the yin to your yang. If you are building a marriage, absolutely go out and get your opposite, right? But as successfully married people will also tell you, go out and get your complement, and oftentimes that complement will be very similar to you, okay? So when people say don't hire anyone like you, I think that is, again, a broad generalization that we really need to rethink. Hi, everyone. It's Allison Williams here, and welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with a Law Firm Mentor podcast, where today we're going to talk about some of the common advice that leads to failure in law firm businesses. Okay, so I was asked to do this topic by actually one of our clients because we ended up having somewhat of a let's call it an LFM after dark conversation at our recent retreat. And this person asked me during that conversation, I won't identify who it is, but they know who they are. But the person asked me, what are some of the things that that you see kind of the internet gurus of the world saying about business, about law firms, about building a law firm business that is just universally wrong? And I said, well, it's hard to get to universally wrong because, even a broke clock is right twice a day, right? But there are some tried and tested truisms that are being spouted about on the internet and kind of shared about routinely when people are trying to mentor each other in growing a business that is just bad advice. And it's not just bad advice because it doesn't ever work. It is just almost universally an underthought, underdeveloped idea that doesn't really have teeth to it unless you understand the underpinnings behind the saying. So I want to share 3 of those with you today, and we're going to talk about it. So first up, the first one that I hear all the time, this is really for people that are launching a law firm. Now, sometimes we get into this when we are already in business, but for the folks that are just starting their business, what we hear a lot is that you should save 3 months of expenses before you launch, right? So you should have money in the bank before you launch. Now, why is that a myth? Well, here's the thing. It's not truly a myth that it's a great idea to have money in the bank, right? Having savings is never a bad thing. But I think what happens a lot of times is that people are lulled into a false sense of security around the idea of savings. It's almost like it feeds this dysfunctional loop that's going in the mind of the business owner that if I have money in the bank, I'm okay. Now, mind you, you might have money in the bank, but on the flip side, you might have 10 times the dollar amount in bills coming in and due in the next week that will eat up all the dollars and cents you have in the bank and then some, right? So this idea of having money in the bank is almost always going to lull you into a false sense of security. What I like to tell people is a better approach to this idea is that, yes, savings are ideal. However, you should not wait to create your dream until you have savings. What is much more important for you to learn before you go into law firm business is how to get clients and how to engineer a profit plan, right? Those are the 2 things that will keep you always having access to money, right? So getting clients, if you know how to get clients, then you're going to have a much better opportunity to get money when you need it. Something goes wrong, you have an outrageous bill you weren't aware of, something breaks that you have to fix, something happens that all of a sudden you are now in economic distress. How do you address that? You go out and sell something to someone, right? So of course, getting clients is not just the securing of them through marketing, which is what most people would make up. It also is learning how to sell. And marketing and selling to clients is the way that we consistently keep that flow of clients coming in through the business. But you also need to learn how to keep money in your business. And one of the ways that you do that, one of the most essential ways that you do that, is by creating a profit plan around every role in your business. So when you hire people, you shouldn't just hire people and hope for the best, right? I hire them and I believe that if I charge X dollars for their labor and if I charge Y dollars to the marketplace to hire them to perform a legal service, I should be okay, right? That back of the napkin math is not the way that you build and consistently grow a sustainably profitable business. You have to learn your numbers, and that means learning that before you hire someone, you have to create a plan around how that person is going to make more money for the business than they consume. Right? Professional services firms are high cost businesses. You get greater margins in far many more businesses than in law firms. But law firms generate a lot of money. So when you are thinking about generating a lot of money, oftentimes it becomes a very enticing mistake for you to fall into the habit of saying, oh, we're making plenty of money, we'll be okay. You really have to go into every new hire and reviewing the existing people on your team on a regular basis from the perspective of how much am I putting out for this person and how much am I getting back for this person? And there are a lot of different levers to pull to increase those numbers as they need to be increased, right? If you need to be able to compensate more, there are ways that you can pull efficiency levers so that you can generate more off of that person so that they can earn more, but then also so the business can earn more. But you should always be looking for the business to earn more as a part of your process of bringing people into your business. Okay. So again, myth number one, savings in the bank before you launch. Ideal, but not essential, and oftentimes quite detrimental to the successful business owner. In fact, I have actually seen people who have more access to money be far less successful in business. You see this all the time with people who maybe they have a high income earning spouse and they are not the primary wage earner. Or perhaps they have an inheritance that they're sitting on. Or maybe they have already paid off their primary residence by the time they decide to launch a business. So now they're comfortable. And because they're comfortable, that hustle that would normally have them say, I got to get these clients, I got to learn how to sell, I got to overcome these objections, I got to get people, hiring me before I'm out of business. That urgency doesn't often stay, right? Because they know, if I don't sell a client today, my spouse is going to pay the mortgage, right? Or, if I don't take care of this client's needs today and this client fires me, it's not that big of a deal. My business won't grow, but, we've got food on the table. The kids can go to private school, whatever the case may be. Those are oftentimes the people who are the hardest to coach because they are oftentimes lulled into a sense of it's okay if I'm successful and it's okay if I'm not successful. And they don't truly tap into the inner desire for why they wanted to be successful in the first place. They kind of layer themselves at the very, very highest peak of, is it absolutely essential? Am I going to be able to sustain myself? So again, myth number one, savings in the bank before you launch. True, somewhat false. Okay. Myth number two. Myth number two is one I hear bantered about a lot, which is in the world of hiring. I hear a lot of people say, you should not hire anybody like you. You should go out and hire people who are the yin to your yang. If you are building a marriage, absolutely go out and get your opposite, right? But as successfully married people will also tell you, go out and get your complement. And oftentimes that complement will be very similar to you. Okay. So when people say don't hire anyone like you, I think that is, again, a broad generalization that we really need to rethink. So first thing, when you think about you as a lawyer and as a CEO, I want you to think about all of the attributes that you would identify in yourself that you would love to have in an employee. Okay. And just kind of jot them down, right? If you just do this little exercise, for those of you that are listening to this podcast, if you are out on your morning run or in the car, wait until you're stationary. But if you are sitting at home or have access to a pen and paper, this would be a great time for you to pull it out. And I want you to just think about all of the things that made you successful in business. Now, I am going to bring it to both lawyering and CEO because for many of you, not all of you, but many of you, you are functionally doing both of those roles. But think about it first from the perspective of lawyering, because that is probably who you're going to hire. You're probably not going to hire another CEO in your law firm, at least not yet, at least not at the size that most of you are that are listening to this podcast, right? You're not probably going to go out and hire a C-suite executive, even though we do have a whole series coming up all about C-suites, and we hope that you all are encouraged to actually build out your C-suite. But just think about lawyering, okay? If I think about myself as a lawyer, I think about having a great ability to read people. I think about having a tenacity to pursue difficult issues. I see a dedication to clients, right? I see a person who has a great skill at cross-examination, right? So if I write those things down on paper and then it's time for me to go to market, there are times where those would be the skills that I might prioritize, and there are other times where those are not the skills that I prioritize. Now, some things might universally be prioritized, right? Caring for clients, value system I have, values that's written into my law firm mission statement, definitely something that we're going to hire for. But being able to cross-examine is more important in some practice areas than other, right? If I'm hiring an estate planning attorney, I don't need them to be able to cross-examine. Perhaps at some point in time, they might get in probate court and they might have an adversarial hearing and they might have to cross-examine someone. But that is going to be the exception and not the rule. That is not their day-to-day lived experience as a lawyer in your law firm. And in particular, in this instance, my law firm, right? But if I'm hiring a child abuse attorney, that means somebody who could get a call at 9 o'clock in the morning and my salesperson could say, okay, what seems to be the issue? And the client says, or potential client says, I got court at 1:30 in the afternoon and the state wants to take my child away. I need a lawyer. I need a lawyer who's not afraid to go to court, get a voluminous amount of information thrown at them and have to figure out on their feet in a moment how to ask questions and how to ask questions very aggressively to pursue an agenda. And that theme, that theory of the case, none of that you have time to build out, right? That's not usual litigation. That is urgent litigation. But that urgent litigation strategy, at least in my personal experience, has kept thousands of children out of foster care. So I think it is something that not only is worthy of looking for, but is essential to look for when we are hiring. But again, if I'm hiring an estate planning attorney, I don't need that skill, right? Nice to have so that if on the off chance there's a probate matter and we ultimately get into an adversarial hearing and we have to have that skill, you would have that skill and not have to develop that skill. Wonderful, but not necessarily essential. Certainly not something that we would prioritize over other skills if we're looking at candidates. So that's what I'm talking about when I say you have to really think about what are the attributes that you value in yourself and that you require for the role that you are looking for. If you don't do that work, by the way, pre-framing before you interview the person, a lot of us can get lulled into our own little habit of looking for ourselves. And we don't even know that we're doing it. Sometimes it's just a feeling. There's something about the person I just don't quite like. Or we get a sense that the person is good, but they're not, quote, as good as me. And that not as good as me mindset, of course, stops us and keeps us limited in a whole host of ways regarding our businesses. But it's especially essential when you are hiring someone that you know going in what they have to have and what they should not have. Right? So similarly, you know what some of your strengths are. I would like to think you also know what some of your weaknesses are. What are those areas? What are those punch list items that you would say, yeah, if I could write that out of my ecosystem, I would. Mine is proofreading. For some reason, my hands, when I am typing up a document myself, My hands just do not want to type a, and, or the, right? I will skip over a, and, or the in the course of a sentence at least 40% of a document, easily. If I don't have someone to proofread my documents, I know that I am very, very stressed about filing that document with the court because I know it's going to contain errors. I just know that, right? My eyes don't see it. And that cognitive distortion is so well embedded now that everyone knows whenever they are doing work for me in the office that they have to either themselves or through someone else on the team procure a proofreader, right? So if that is a skill that can be allocated to another person, perhaps I'm fine hiring someone who has a similar deficit in that regard. But if we're staff light and I don't have someone who's going to be able to proofread it, or I don't have the technology for the proofreading, then I have to hire somebody who does not have that deficit. Now, this is somewhat of a silly example because with all of the tools that we have access to now, even AI tools, like you can literally upload your document, not saying you should do this, you can literally upload your document with redacted names to ChatGPT and ask it to proofread it for you, right? So you can get proofreading done without another human and certainly without that being encoded into the human you're hiring for a variety of roles. But that's neither here nor there. The point is still the same. Ultimately, you want to think about what you have that you want and that you don't want. And you need to look objectively at the person who you are hiring through the lens of the role that you're going to have them hired for. But then also, through the filter of, are they like me? Are they not like me? But it is not universally true that you should not hire people like you, because there are some of you that are absolutely exceptional at what you do, and your clients would be well served by having another version of you in the office. Now, I said another version of you. That does not mean, okay, hear me very carefully, that does not mean that you should be going out and looking for someone who is like you, okay? The fact that it is a myth that you do not ever hire someone like you does not mean that it is a truth that you should always hire someone like you. You are looking for someone who fits the role that you are looking to fill. And sometimes you have some of those attributes, sometimes not. But what you shouldn't do is have a universal rule that says they're like us or they're not like us, okay? Whoever you are hiring has to run through the filter of, do they meet the criteria of your job ad? And when you are personally involved in the hiring process, doing that self-reflection, that audit, that pre-frame helps you to avoid hiring tendencies that distinctly allow you to choose someone or avoid choosing someone because of how you feel about yourself, okay? That's what we're trying to avoid there. All right, myth number 3. Now, this one you hear not only in the world of growing and developing law firms, you will also hear this one all over CNBC. You will hear this one at the Harvard Business Review. You will hear this bantered about on all of the social media platforms, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and Instagram, right? All of the big spots, right? On X. You hear it everywhere. And this is that people don't quit bad jobs. People quit bad managers, right? As soon as you hear that, a lot of you are probably clapping. Like, there's like a thought reel that says, oh yeah, of course people quit bad managers. But here's the thing. The legal profession is full of people who change jobs more frequently than the average person in our American society. So it's important that we recognize that you are statistically more likely to have job turnover in a law firm than you are in most other employment situations other than very high stress situations, right? So there are some professions that are just by nature very dangerous, and they obviously can take a toll on a person's physical and mental health. If you're talking about combat, right? Yeah, those are the types of positions that you certainly will have a lot of turnover, or at least turnover in the sense of people not sustaining in those roles. But in terms of law firms, lawyers on average, according to the ABA, lawyers on average change jobs every 4 years. Okay. So even if you are America's next top legal employer, right, you got a fabulous culture, you give generously to your team, you highly compensate people, you give them a lot of freedom and autonomy, you engender a sense of shared purpose and guidance here in your business, right? You have followed all of the rules. You have read all of the management books, all of the tools. You've got unrelenting hospitality towards your clients. You are doing everything, quote unquote, right. You are still going to have people that choose to leave your law firm because they lose the interest in the profession. They lose the interest in your particular law firm. They get a certain itch, right? The 4-year itch as opposed to the 7-year itch. They just want to move around, right? And now I think one of the other things that we are facing, and this is something that I don't think is talked about enough, but it's a real thing, is that we have to keep in mind that as a society, we are now graduating fewer lawyers than we have historically by a significant margin. There are not enough lawyers to go around, right? So a lot of these efficiency tools that a lot of lawyers have been kind of throwing up their hands with and saying, I don't know if I really want to spend my time and energy on that AI stuff yet. I still want to do it the old way. Here's the thing. At some point in time, if you don't start utilizing some of these tools like AI, you might not have the bandwidth to serve your existing clients because you might not have the workforce to serve your existing clients, okay? Now, I don't want to go predicting that is like turning a corner like tomorrow. I don't think you're going to be out of a job by virtue of being a lawyer in the next 5 years, but we are definitely facing a crunch there. And as a result, the recruiters are out and hunting, right? The recruiters are calling your paralegals, your lawyers, your legal secretaries, and they're saying, hey, how do you feel over there? Do you like it at John Doe's law firm? I have an interesting opportunity that you might be interested in where you could make, X dollars a year. You could have this kind of benefit. You could have this kind of work life. How does that sound to you? And a person could be generally very happy where they are. In fact, when we talk about going out and poaching lawyers from other law firms, we talk about it from the perspective of nothing beats hiring a happy person, right? I would love to find a lawyer who likes what they're doing, who likes their current employer, who likes the atmosphere where they're doing it, and is just so hungry for more, whether it's more status, more money, more opportunity, building more career, whatever it is, that they are willing to seize upon my offer, right? It's great if that's what they want, because that means this is not a disgruntled person who has a chip on their shoulder with their current employer. Now, those people can be hired as well, and those people can be hired out of toxic environments and into your environment and become very happy. But my point is simply this, that when you are thinking about the current landscape of who is available to be hired, it is really important that you keep in mind that lawyers move around, and it is not a truism that if a lawyer leaves your law firm, that you're a shitty employer, that you're a shitty manager, that you never did anything for them, etc., right? Sometimes people write that narrative. Emotionally, they write that narrative. They make you the demon in their story. They make you the devil in their story because they feel that they need to have a justification to leave. It can't just be, I want something different, so I'm leaving. They need you to be wrong in order to validate the choice that they made to leave, right? And it sucks when that happens because then you can't just part as friends and say, all right, well, I wish you would have stayed, but I wish you well in your future endeavors, and I hope to see you out there in our legal field, right? Unfortunately, a lot of folks can't do that, and people leave employment with kind of a negative spin. But by and large, this is really what I want to impress upon you, that there's always the opportunity for self-reflection, and there's always the opportunity to look at the culture that you've created, the systems that you have in place, the compensation that you're paying, the way in which you interact with your team, and how you are running your company, and say, do I like this? Do I not like this? What can I do better? How can I evolve? How could I have possibly saved this relationship if it was an employee that you are unhappy that they're leaving? But many times, many times, lawyers beat themselves up saying, this person left, there must be something wrong with me. When in actuality, you just weren't their cup of tea, right? What's that movie? He's just not that into you, right? It could just be that he's just not that into you. And that's not because there's something inherently wrong with you. It's that, there's a yin to every yang. There's an up to every down. There's a good to every bad, and so forth, right? You two may not be on the same page, and that might be okay. Other times, it might be that there might be something that you could be doing better, so you can take it as a learning opportunity. But the universal truism that if an employee is leaving a job, it is because there is a bad manager is simply not true. Many times they were well managed, they were well cared for, and they simply wanted something else because they got anxious, because they feel they should be moving around every few years, because they got bored, because they kept getting harassed by a recruiter, any number of reasons. But regardless, don't take it personally if someone leaves. Many times there's an opportunity for reflection, but the answer at the end of your reflection could very well be, this was just not a good fit. All right, everyone. I'm Allison Williams, your law firm mentor, and you have been listening to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I'll see you on our next episode.